I just want to hear James rant about like mathematically matching people semantically and actually.
Okay.
No, you just have to pull that out. I don't think I've heard it on the podcast.
Every time
yet.
James says actually,
things you do.
Take a drink every time I say actually.
No, that's a good one.
Send prompts, not nudes. I just want to AI some shit.
All right, let's kick it off then. Hello, gentlemen. Happy Friday. We are recording episode number 6 of the DNAI Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. And of course, in typical DNAI podcast fashion, we have to kick off with our, what are we drinking? As John takes a long sip from his glass of bourbon. What do you got, John?
I have a 4-gate refinished whiskey, technically. Kentucky straight bourbon finished in cognac cask, 7 years.
That sounds good.
It is delectable. Just a 144.2.
And just drinking it straight there, I see.
Yeah, I ran out of ice cubes.
James, what do you got?
Today I've got a Ron Izalco 18-year rum, and it is very interesting. It's got like this vinaigrette nose on it, but then when you on the palate, it's straight up marshmallows, like
what?
Campfire marshmallows.
Italian salad dressing and marshmallows. That's so interesting.
It's an 18-year. Yep. It's, if you can find it, pick it up. It's the most unique rum I think I've tasted.
Send me a picture of that bottle. I'm super curious.
Here's a quick question for both of you guys with these backgrounds of lots of bottles back there. Do you know all of those bottles? If you pick one up, you're like, oh, I remember this one. All of them.
Yeah, of course.
Every single one. You can come over and be like, hey, we're gonna have this dish. What bourbon would pair best with this? And I will lay it, like James has seen me do it. I'll lay out 3 different bourbons and I'll tell you why I would pick them and like why their flavor palette, all the way from like super mild and sippable to burn your face off, which is how I prefer it.
Fair enough. We'll probably have to take you up on that dinner sometime and leverage your collection. I live in Arizona. It's 65 degrees today, so I have tequila and pineapple juice. We're throwing it back to summer. It's nice and warm and sunny, and I didn't want to drink bourbon, so tequila and pineapple. Randy, what do you got?
I'm snowed in my digital chateau here, as you can see. It is 5 degrees here today, so it's been a brutally cold week. I am actually sipping this interesting looking bottle. It's called 1420. It's whiskey. It comes from a distillery down the street in South Norwalk, as they call it, Sono 1420. And it starts strong, but it's got a smooth finish.
Nice. Sounds like it'll get the job done by the time we're wrapping this episode up.
Yes.
There you have it. There's our round of drinks, not wasting any time and jumping into a whole slew of topics. It's been a pretty active and busy week in the world of AI. Of course, we have the new administration just wasting no time getting into office there and just signing executive orders left and right. Let's talk about some of that because that's getting interesting. Obviously, the Trump administration is pretty pro AI development. They're pushing this race along. They're also pretty pro cryptocurrency, which we won't get into the weeds there, but focusing on AI, there's a lot of tech stuff that they want to be the winners. If you're not familiar with some of the latest developments, the biggest one is what they're calling the Stargate project, which is a $500 billion AI investment into data centers and AI development to firmly secure the US's spot as number one in the, what is it? Is it a race for just really great AI, or is it the race for AGI?
Neither.
It's a race for infrastructure to.
It's just a straight up compute
race
to keep John in America.
Yeah, keep him going from somewhere else
all
to work.
John.
No, it's a really good. If you would have asked me that last week, I would have totally told you that it's like something in between AGI and like needing just scalability for larger models and all that kind of crap. After operator release, I can tell you right now, it's straight up compute. Like it is hardcore. How much compute do we need in order to do autonomous like AI things? Not even at like super advanced level, just that it can be done. And operator's a really good example of how many different endpoints can be running simultaneously by one person, and each one of those be operated by a separate entity. James's operator Inception is pretty funny. I wish that would have worked, because that would have been entertaining as hell.
Yeah, we're going to dive into operators a little bit more later on in the episode, where you guys have been playing around with them in the 48 hours and it's been out, or less, 24 hours. That was last night, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't stop prompting it.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I want to hear it. To just add a little more clarity to the Stargate project, this isn't the government investing money. This is a partnership that is endorsed by the government between several different companies, OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. I believe it starts with $100 billion immediate investment for this infrastructure. And then over the course of 4 years, they roll into the remaining budget. They're building massive data centers in Texas, where they're starting. I think Sam Altman has already tweeted some pictures of big, beautiful buildings. But I want to ask you guys, what's your opinion of where this takes America in the overall race for AI dev? We've seen open source models that are pretty competitive with retail models that are out there from other countries.
I have to stop you right there, because this isn't open source dev.
No, this isn't. We've seen that competition heating up. So I think America clearly wants to have their...
I don't know how much we know about how that money eventually gets spent, right? Open source or closed source needs compute. Compute needs energy. At the end of the day, that's like something that I think the government has a vested interest in, making compute as cheap as possible by providing lots of capacity and encouraging businesses and researchers to use American infrastructure. There's also the jobs and the political component of this that can't be ignored. And the fact that OpenAI needs a lot of money from somewhere. Like, there's definitely a lot going on here that it's, I think, still too early to know for sure how that impacts, other than if you go back to like our last episode where we were talking about the mega trends, right? Compute is becoming cheaper because of innovation and scaling of what we can actually put on a chip. And in this, I believe, is just going to create way more chips, or more customers for NVIDIA, basically, to consume those chips.
And
Drill, baby, drill.
Raspberry Pi R1.
What's that?
I said, and enter Raspberry Pi R1.
I saw that, yeah. R1,
Yeah,
for anyone not familiar, that's DeepSeek's newest model release, which is an open source model developed by a Chinese company. Recently, I saw something that said they actually have all of this equipment from a crypto mining operation, and DeepSeek is their side project. It's like their side hustle that's turned into this massive open source, free to use. And there's just nonstop posts about, how great R1 is, how comparable it is to some of the other expensive retail models out there. I've been playing around with it actually, and it's really cool, at least to see the thought process. They did a really good job in making it very humanized. It talks through, okay, the user wants to do this. I should research this portion before moving on to here. Pretty cool.
But what's interesting is it actually researching.
It does have web capability, web search capability.
Oh, are you using the one that's connected?
Yeah, I registered on their webpage, and you can do either the R1 model with web or without.
What's interesting is without it, it's still saying similar things. And it's essentially just self-referencing. It's like using its own tokens and its own knowledge to say, I need to think about this. And then it's going through and he's saying, okay, these topics and these things, and it's starting to map that thought process around it before it responds, which is really interesting about like using LLMs to make better prompts and better responses from other LLMs, except now we have the LLM doing it to itself, but in its own process. So I think that's a really interesting example, but also if that model can exist on a Raspberry Pi, like our entire conversation about those little NVIDIA bytes is a very interesting dialogue also, because that's impressive. Like that's an extremely powerful model. Anything that competes with O1 or can outdo O1, even in a category, single category, has a value statement, especially that can fit on something that size.
And not to mention, it's reportedly 96% cheaper than in terms of inference costs compared to the other models out there. Being open source, I believe they have API access as well. Start building off of the R1 DeepSeek infrastructure.
Start bringing a copy in locally.
Did they have any information on the performance of the model on the Raspberry Pi?
No, it's limited. It is, Yeah,
Did
James.
it explode? Did it?
I don't know. It was like this little. It's one of the groups that I follow, and they had this like super excited post. I think I shared it with you guys. They were just like, "We think we did it," and it wasn't even confirmed.
saw
And a
that.
bunch of people have been reposting it, but it was limited to 200 token, and it would essentially do the thinking cycles, but obviously significantly lagging performance-wise because of the level of compute.
Yeah.
But output-wise, you're getting a limited token count, right? That's the big thing. You don't have a ton of RAM, but the fact of the application, think about something like that intelligently monitoring and running your house thermostat. Do you need massive token input and output in order to fine tune it to just literally make your life never have to change your thermostat because it automatically handles it all? You say, I need it at about this temperature, figure it out.
Interesting.
Yeah, very small scale, very use case specific applications. Yeah.
Yep. And controlled by a voice
they
to
trained
text
it.
somewhere else that you know, gives it the settings, right, that you want to maintain.
The ease with which this thing was trained and the fact that the methodology is open, right? Like, so O1, everyone sees the promise of, we see the thinking summaries, but we don't know what it's actually doing. We don't know how to do it ourselves. Like, you know, a lot of people have theories on the right approach, right? Like, yeah, with OpenAI's budget, we could totally do it. But the point is, with DeepSeek's budget, you could go away for a weekend in an inexpensive city. Like, it was a very inexpensive model to train. And the implication there that it's both public methodology and low barrier to entry means Raspberry Pis all over the world, baby. And whatever specific niche thing you need, reasoning can now be exported and brought into a more widespread adoption.
Not to get too deep in the weeds here, but it's the same thing that Sky did. And we're playing around with that architecture. And I'm playing around right now with a 8-bill MOE version of their architecture for Enable, but leveraging our cognitive approaches. And an 8-bill llama model is not big. And strapping a bunch of those things together and upping the token limit to 128 and an input of 16 was surprisingly easy. Now we get to, okay, where does it benchmark? How do we benchmark it? There's a lot of other things that go along with this, but from an accessibility standpoint, we're getting to a very unique place where the technology is the mechanism by which we are able to build the next layer of technology. And the next layer of technology is more accessible, which is, it's that gap conversation that we had, I think, like 3 podcasts ago. The people that are way up here building the really cool shit, the open source market is literally gap, like that gap is actually closing. And before it felt like this huge chasm that was like not going to be reached. And now because of the tools of the folks up here that are making it, we're closing it.
What do you think that does long term, or maybe not even long term, but you know, for the retail AI companies out there? Like, I posted a link here in the private chat if you guys want to look at it. With these open source models, people are doing really creative stuff. This guy's stringing together, he has 8 Mac minis there, running a total of 896 gigabytes unified memory with DeepSeek R1. And his caption is, "I will run AGI at home or die trying." Like, the open source, what does that do long term to retail when the open source is closing that gap, like you said, but also enabling people to run it locally and at home and get creative with, 8 Macs tied together?
I want to hear James's opinion on this for sure, but the definition of AGI is going to keep changing. We have still done an absolute crap job of putting like the benchmark bull crap with OpenAI and getting the tests and data and all that crap early, and not being able to talk about it is just like one of many things that we're probably going to discover over the next few years, especially as companies are trying to say they have AGI versus somebody else. But if I asked you what it means to be human and to think and to learn, and then I ask another person and another person, we're going to have a bell curve. So while we may say AGI is this, somebody else may say it's this. And at some point, we're going to have a social norm that's going to meet, and we'll have this nice, clean, beautiful definition, but we're still going to have a bell curve of capabilities that like could be in left or right of what we would determine as AGI. Just sometimes people are really slow and sometimes people can think really fast, but it doesn't change that they're still people.
Yeah. James, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. The whole AGI conversation is getting a little boring to me, if I'm being honest.
I'm with you.
I think AGI is when AI does the thing that you want it to do when you want it to do it,
No questions asked, or no lack.
and it does well,
Does it
right?
well.
Like
60% like person level.
what's the point, right? What's the point of all this, right? Like why outcomes? Yeah, exactly. If I have AI that can do what I need it to do, and I don't have to sit there and fight it, right? And it can contextualize things and understand how I'm understanding, right? And it's I think probably personalization is a big factor in that, and having that context. I don't know, but I'm not gonna define what AGI is. I don't.
I
It
think
seems
you're hitting something unique on the head around context. It's something we talk about all the time. Like
Mhm.
when we're just helping people understand like why AI responded the way it responded, we talk about context all the time. And I think this is a critical aspect, and maybe not in the definition of AGI, but like in how we as people think about what we just do by just being here. Like how much information we're processing just sitting here with eyes, ears. It is a unbelievable amount of context.
And subconsciously too, right? We're not actively trying to focus on all these things where our bodies take them all in simultaneously and just subconsciously run these
Yep. And
background
it just,
programs.
yeah, there's layers and layers of context that is happening even without us thinking about that context that is influencing how we verbally respond. When we are able to bridge a layer of that contextual gap, not embodiment, I'm not talking about just embodiment, I'm talking about just enough where AI doesn't have to go, what do you mean? Or why? Because it has enough natural context, or it's able to understand because it has a level of personalization, like James said, or there's all these other mechanisms. If you build what we were talking about earlier, an R1 that does nothing but thermostat, does it really need to have a lot of context about anything else other than the fact that I said I like it 72 degrees? The
Yeah,
other context it needs is what's the high, what's the low, air conditioning, heat, humidity, maybe if it's a part of a setting, and that's it. That's all it needs to understand. But we're asking it to think and analyze and conversate.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I'm not a neuroscientist, or I don't know.
You did sleep at a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, I did. All I'm saying is the human brain is extremely efficient at processing. It's not great at storage. It's not great at memory. So to me, it's if we think about AI, and AI is not, unless we have a Terminator scenario where we're just all wiped out, there will still be humans. There will still be AI. So to me, it's how
You
do
heard it
you
here first.
what's what's the AI human relationship? I think humans are good at processing. AI can be good at memory recall, right? If we can figure out how to connect that together, might have something that is
Dangerous combo.
Yeah.
a dangerous combo, right? Like you take the best from both worlds. How do you build a system that can operate cohesively with a human, and you have your AI that's filling in the gaps or the things that humans struggle doing?
We've beaten the dead horse of AGI over the last few episodes and talked a ton about what it is and what it could be. And I think we all agree the goalpost continually moves. I'd be curious, tying it back to DeepSeek and OpenAI and their new partnership. I don't know if we ever got answers on what do you think that does to retail AI with these open source models closing the gap. I'm curious to know
downward
how would
price
you guys,
pressure
yeah,
all day, every day.
competition, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
But
That's go back to the $500 billion Stargate. The entire purpose is to, whatever those outcomes are, probably primarily national security, make it less expensive to achieve the same objectives, because the 500 billion you put in takes out several trillion of economic costs that it is replacing. And we, the consumer, get the benefit of the better architecture and better model and greater knowledge base of how to make these things work.
You bring up a good point, Randy. Right? It goes back to like when everybody was getting crazy over the fact that ChatGPT 3 was a thing. And what did everybody run out and do? They're like, oh my God, we got to build models and all this different stuff. And Microsoft's over there, 10 billion in infrastructure. And Microsoft's dedicated 50 billion up to this point in infrastructure, and they're sitting pretty for the next 20 years on the fact that they're ahead of the curve selling shovels, and people need to scoop a bunch of data poop.
Yeah.
Right. And the value of their existing infrastructure and their competitor infrastructure is going down because there's so much on the market, right? Like there's so many chips being created. There's so many servers being plugged in. It's obviously
If it was that
demand thing, but
accessible, why did token rate limits exist?
globally accessible, local shortage.
No, but
Right.
like, period. Like, I think this is an interesting topic because I'm going to use Anthropic as an example because it's very different than OpenAI, right? We have hundreds of millions of tokens per minute, and we're a top tier Anthropic user also, and they're limiting it. I think it's like 400,000. Now, it's bad when I can cap both of those in a couple hours, but your Anthropic side is based off of Amazon and where they're at from an infrastructure investment and development standpoint. So we do really have a gap in infrastructure for accessibility, because if every big company out there was investing anywhere close to the level, and we're a startup, right? How do those two things work together, and why do those even exist?
We're in the midst of a cycle, right? This is a historical thing, right? Like when the railroad came out, when the telephone came out, the first infrastructure builders over invest, right? There's a period of shortage where you can't get the thing. Then there's a period of over investment until the demand finds its market. And then historically, there's companies that go too far that then go out of business or restructure, because that's how you get like cheap internet fiber, right? Because there's just too much of it for how fast they put it in. The thing we don't understand yet is the rate curve of AI adoption, and whether or not that there will be a period like that, because it's very different. We already have all the things we need to transform big chunks of the economy into AI. The question is really, I think, a matter of political will, which has changed, and human nature and desire to change and potentially make the changes in the workforce that come along with that. But yeah, that long term, I think there's going to be a glut of capability.
And I think, Sam, I think it's blockchain and gig economy is what starts happening.
Yeah.
We
Click
can
on that. I
create,
like this.
yeah. So like we can create a lot of them. A really popular AI is entertainment based. I can't tell you how much fun I have creating AI music and creating AI images, and I can spend hours doing that.
My stuff, my way.
Yeah, but it's the stuff I want, the way I want it. And so it feels like the natural progression here. And then also reading in between the lines of what the policy changes we're seeing and some of the interests we see there with crypto, with these sorts of technologies, Web 3.0. It feels like it wouldn't shock me if we started seeing a ramp up in that sort of space, right? Just thinking out loud. I don't really know. I don't have a crystal ball, but it feels like that's maybe where we're headed.
I think that's a good call, James. I think like your ultra personalization is something we've talked about like a lot. I think that's it. At a certain extent, we all like things our way. Let's be real. Like, I don't build a new house and go through the pain and heartache during COVID because I just wanted a new house. I want the house I want the way I want it. And we're getting to a point where that hasn't been an option for people. You can't do a lot of custom AI because that wasn't super accessible. That's vastly changed.
Yeah.
You can't get access to some of these things or build it yourself. That's completely changed. We're at the point where we're having AI build other AI, like other AI build other models. Like eventually you'll be able to infinitely experiment. Like, hey, cool. I like what DeepSeek's doing, but I also like this, and I like this, and I like this. Cool. Make me a Franken model that does all of these things. Oh, it failed. Cool. Do it again. And the only limitation at that point is going to be how much you want to pay for compute. So we're not there yet, but we're on that verge, right? Part of it is accessibility and availability of compute. Part of it is also like the technology and how accessible that is, which is also becoming far easier for the average user who has no clue how to build an LLM, just to be like, I would like an LLM that is built off of a 7-bill llama framework. Go.
Yeah.
And it could do it.
Yeah.
So I think if we think about the market trend, and where we're really headed overall, it is deep personalization to what the customer wants. And if you can't deliver that, the customer will go to somebody who can.
Absolutely. Quickly too. It'll be fast because
They'll prompt it.
yeah, that's it.
They'll jump in perplexity and be like, who does this better than this person?
Yeah.
I think the consumer starts really adopting that, especially like younger generations just grow up in it and they become the business owners and customers who demand that same level in that's why SaaSes are in trouble. That's why large corporate entities that depend on human-based systems to coordinate activity, they will eventually be driven by a demanding consumer that knows that can be rearranged and by speaking it into existence and not bear the cost of that extra overhead of a legacy enterprise.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about comparing it to past breakthroughs and transformational periods of our own human history, like the printing press. What I think is cool about this is that there's this overall democratization of information that's much more accessible compared to transformations like the printing press. Even the Ottoman Empire blocked production or printing of text for years and years after the printing press was developed. And at the way we're such a digitally ingrained species now, and with the open source and people's knowledge of computers and builds, they're able to just spin these things up and have access to a similar level of information. Like we said, that gap is closing, which makes it really cool. And I think that is what feeds the crypto trends that I think we'll see coming, just more decentralization, democratization.
Well, as knowledge gets democratized, right, new knowledge emerges.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Bingo.
Yep. And then that'll be like the question mark thing that not everyone has access to.
Yeah.
This is a spot on topic because a lot of the news headlines were like, Sam's going to Washington to talk about PhD level, models coming soon. And it's like, I'm sorry, but O1 Pro, like that beats most data analysts at the day to day, and it gives me what I need in like minutes around like big complex data sets and very accurately. So if we're talking about we're talking about day-to-day impact and like outcomes, like that is probably the most, in my opinion, one of the most salient examples. Can you get that out of O1? It depends. Like sometimes not. I think O1 Pro is a good example of like it needs a little bit more to get a better result, and 9 times out of 10 you will get a better result via using O1 Pro than you would O1. But like 90% of the population doesn't need O1 Pro. Yeah. Let's be very honest. They're not asking it complex things or trying to innovate. And honestly, the thing that I've noticed about O1 Pro that it does better than O1 is when I ask it to, hey, if I'm trying to measure this thing at a quantum level, and I'm just thinking way outside of the box, I can sit there and dialogue at this like completely innovative non-topic level where no white paper has ever gone. And it will be like, yeah, you could do that. And it might not, but this white paper over here, like it references information. It does a great job of pulling that in or bullshitting you sometimes. I have caught it doing that. But let's call it what it is.
They're not searching, right? O1 Pro's closed off.
They just announced some new releases. Just came into my inbox on O1 Pro and Canvas. Now O1 Pro can be used in Canvas. And there's some other new releases. So
I think O3 is going to the free tier too for all
mini. Yeah.
O3 mini. Yeah.
Some version. We'll see what it is, but that's what they're calling whatever they're releasing. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're already to a point, this is my personal opinion, where most of the models out there are exceeding the average consumer's use case.
For sure.
And it's just a matter of the consumer seeing the reality that this has a level of impact to their reality before it starts to reach that, oh shit, I have to pay attention.
Yeah. That's why I say it's the cultural, the human factor is really the limit right now, I think, on expansion, not the technology. Because if everything stopped and models got no less expensive or no better than they are today, I still believe it'd be 10 years or more until we fully integrated them into all the things that they can be doing in our society.
So what's your projection for full integration given the fact that they continue to progress? Do you feel like
10 years.
that'll still take 10 years?
So there's a couple interesting things happening, right? So I think like the federal government has a very big kind of sometimes unseen influence on how these things evolve, right? So like the two major executive orders that like I was tracking this week is the repeal of the Biden version of the executive order and then the implementation of the Trump version.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Trump's executive order is very similar to Biden's in that it doesn't say much at first, and then it gives timelines for the agencies to do different things. But like the incentive for Trump is to basically deregulate, demonitor, and incentivize usage. Also from like the cost cutting side, Elon Musk is going to be trying to push Grok into every sector of the government. And even if that doesn't work out, like the opportunities for automation and for AI in government sector is huge. And that's I don't even know if that's a gigantic workforce, right? And a gigantic piece of the economy that tends to then trickle into what government contractors are doing and what spin-offs are doing, what kind of the R&D outside of just pure AI R&D, all the other things that transact with the government. If the counterparty of those transactions begins to have AI expectation, and that's the biggest customer you have, all of a sudden you've got logistic part manufacturers in the Midwest starting to think about how do I interface with a AI-enabled federal government. So I don't know if it'll get there, but that's
Not fast.
potential. But the pace of that adoption, I think, could over 10 years accelerate things in a way that it might not have gone if the election had been a different way.
But I think this is a good point because we've been talking for several podcasts on the acceleration of innovation and technology progression, right? And that curve and how ridiculous it is. But we haven't seen that curve fully maturate into all these other areas or industries. But like the areas we have seen it, we see a similar trend, right? It starts slow, it starts to progress, it starts to curve up, and then all of a sudden it's like balls to the wall, guys, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting aspect of that whole point that James just made, democratization, right? Freedom of data begets more innovation and more data. And we're going to reach a point where that is a government thing. Like government will have to realize that at a point, there are certain things that it doesn't need a human so that it can sit there at a desk and fill out a form. There is plenty of AI that can do that for a person at a DMV. And I'm sorry, but all DMVs are not needed. You don't need a human to DMV anything, anywhere. And I've actually seen that in some states, even here in Ohio, where they have explored using agents to handle DMV transactions and interactions. And come on, you guys all know this. If I asked you to build me an agent or an agent structure that took people's basic information, validated it on documentation, and made sure that their driver's license was printed, like
easy, could do it
all day.
Yeah.
I'll take I'll drop my cell phone.
If there are any DMVs hire us, though, that would be a $100 million 10-year contract.
Yeah. If the DMV's out there listening to this, shoot us an email because we can build it.
It's very hard and it takes a lot of money.
But like that, how, yeah. I love it. But that's where we're at. Like that level of realization hasn't reached the general populace.
Yeah.
And when they realize that you could point your phone at a document and have it recreate the document instantly in a proper format with the right data and have a person validate it. Okay, great. So what do you need? I need a DMV app that is using proper encryption that hooks into the database for government. And now people just use their phone and AI to do their driver's license update. Done.
What's crazy is you can build that app from your phone while you're waiting at the DMV.
That's true. I could have my AI build it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did this. I had to go to a doctor appointment and that we had to share some information on a regular basis with the doctor. And so I'm just sitting there on my phone, playing with Replit, building up the application that would do that. And it's baked by the time the doctor actually talks to you. It's
how wild is that you're doing it from a cell phone in your pocket? You're running an AI app that's writing code for you, that's assembling all of your directories and putting it into a repository and getting everything going so you can just pump out an app while you're waiting at the hour and a half line at the DMV.
But you're not. looks that simple, but what you're actually doing is you're reaching out to an application that's acting as middleware to an endpoint that is compute to run all the other stuff. But
to the consumer, Randy, that doesn't matter. He gets the end result still, right?
What is the outcome? I'm sitting at a place doing a thing. I don't like what they're doing. I can build an app that does it better than they can. Ready, go.
I think packaging too, it's how it's packaged and presented to consumers to solve specific problems, because AI is so broad and so general. And a lot of people, I think, especially newbies when it comes to AI, sit in front of a large model like this and they're like, oh, what the hell do I talk to it about? What do I type here? How do I get the best results back to me off of my prompts? And so right now, what we see is all these specific use cases being built with AI, the AI layer being built in to solve very specific problems and then presented and packaged to the consumer saying, hey, this AI will do X, Y, and Z for you automated.
Yeah.
People snatch
I think
it
it's
up.
a mindset thing, though. I think everybody on this call, maybe not you, Sam, but like most of us would open up TikTok and like, how do I make a TikTok video? Am I really going to sit here and dance? And how do I, but like younger generations are, like, they know
Randy,
it's native.
you dance?
Yeah, what are you saying? Maybe not me.
I
You
don't wanna
don't
break
think
the
I open
podcast.
TikTok?
I just want to see a
that's
TikTok
what I
video
said,
by
yeah.
Randy.
Great on it.
It sounds
You know what I mean?
really entertaining. I will
So-
subscribe.
He's
To the
saying we
point
don't know
that
how to
the-
do that.
We don't know how to do that. That's not natural.
I think I'm
for
the
us,
same
but-
age as you guys, though. How come you guys don't know how to do that? I'm like a
You know,
younger generation. I'm almost 40. I turned 40 this
You're-
year.
marketing fluent. You live in that world.
So with all this talk of rapid development, the goalpost of AGI moving, the major partnerships with AI and continuing that, what you guys are saying is that OpenAI's new announcement for their operators is not AGI. We don't have
No.
Oh God, they're so
Beautiful.
dumb.
It's what Anthropic announced like 6 months ago, but
computer use,
probably
right?
to a larger.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's better. Anthropics is better.
Yeah, you think?
It's just too expensive.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a price difference, huh?
I'm paying a flat fee for OpenAI to kick the ass out of their endpoints. Anthropic's making me pay every single time I prompt it, and it's a couple $100 a day.
Yeah.
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 So let's dive
Just
into
ask James,
operators
he'll
a
tell
bit.
you.
Let's preface it for anybody listening that might not know, but AI operators, was it last night that it was rolled out to pro users? Yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday afternoon,
It's
midday. Yeah.
for you to take your AI tool and deploy it across your computer and allow it to click, type, and interact with your screen. So
It's only with a web browser. So that's the difference
with the
between
browser, yeah.
So Anthropic can do with your screen. The operator just uses a browser environment.
So
all of our stuff is available online, right? There's
Yeah.
very little you can't get to at a web browser. So
I was at my son's baseball practice last night when you guys started popping off about operators and spamming our Teams chat with all that stuff. I'd love to hear what you guys jumped into and what you started testing first and what worked, what didn't.
We have to start with James's attempt at AI Inception.
Yeah.
Let's hear
The
it.
novelty wore off pretty quick for me, but
James's I can't give it commands to make it do other commands for other AI. I'm out.
I mean, it's, yeah. So I'm building a lot of AI, as one does in an AI startup, and so the very first thing that came to my mind was, I want a orchestrating operator that can spin up multiple instances of other operators, like my research team, and keep them on task. Because the very first thing that I got sick of was the babysitting. It is.
Yeah, but James, we know why they did it. They did it that way because the guardrails are.
I understand. Yeah,
horrible.
I get it. And
What is the
their
babysitting?
They
Is
have
it
their
having
browser.
you accept changes along the way, or is it giving you errors?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It's-
You gotta accept
unless you
changes.
meta prompt it perfectly, and I'm like, perfectly. It is so nuanced. I don't know why this is so specifically nuanced, and my guess is, in order to control it or put a level of control, they have an endpoint like gap that is very specific, like to what they're trying to just apply NLP. And if those keywords are there, they're reprompting it.
Well,
and taking
so,
away your prompt.
like,
So if you use the wrong word, it'll just straight up tell you like, oh, I can't do that or whatever. Like,
yeah, and this is it's a web-based application, right? It's a web-based autonomous AI, but everything on the web has a CAPTCHA.
Oh,
So
and it can't
like
get past.
you can't get past it. So you have to click in and then verify that I'm a human, right? And then tell the operator that I verified that I'm a human. You can continue now, right? Like I can see where it's headed, and it's going to be pretty cool. But the current execution of it is not. It doesn't really impress me that much.
That seems to be in line with a lot of OpenAI's releases. They release it early. It's not fully polished.
We are a hard client.
They build the hype up.
Yeah,
you guys
we have high standards.
Yeah.
Were you
I
guys
think
able
that
to do
there's-
anything successful with it? Anything cool that came out of it? Or is it all just testing and frustration right now?
Right now, for me, it's just testing and frustration. I'm learning, right? I'm giving it a shot, right? Like I'm giving it its fair shake. But there's just some things where there's some cool things where it's, oh, hey, go out and research, create some LinkedIn post topics, and then go and post it on my LinkedIn, right? I like the amount of time it takes to do that. I can come up with 50 LinkedIn posts in less than 3 minutes in the time it takes for it to go out and research like 3 or 4 things. Like it's really slow. It's maybe I move too fast, but not fast enough for me.
I think the point is like having 4 or 5 of them running while you're doing other stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but then I got 4 or
I think
5
if it's
things
slow,
I gotta click.
If it's slow and reliable, that's
okay.
okay.
Like the prompting is key. Because like
The expectation here
you were
is-
really frustrated. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Randy.
The expectation here is if it's going to be slow and I can multi-thread it, that I don't have to babysit it. In addition to clicking, like for me, I found it just would kept it. I don't know if it didn't retain the memory or what, but it would be lazy, right? Like his other kind of OpenAI model. So it would stop before it really had completed the task, even if I had very clearly given it like the success criteria.
Yeah, I'm trying not to scream. I was having it post on I was having it do some testing things, and it kept going to a game website. Oh, well, I didn't understand my browser history. I asked it why. I'm like, why do you keep going to this game website? It was like a spam website, I'm pretty sure filled with viruses, and it kept going.
Maybe that's why.
Going to this site.
It can't help but go there.
I'm like, what are you doing? Don't go to this site. I'm clearing your cache.
Interesting. How about you, John? Did you get it to do anything that you're like, this is worth?
I mean, I had it doing all sorts of shit it shouldn't be able to do. I had it create a Gmail account, set up its own stuff, do emails, build PowerPoints, had it create documentation. The first PowerPoint was pretty shitty. Second one was acceptable-ish if you're like a junior intern. So definitely have some room to grow, but like I did give it feedback. It did try to make something on brand. It did okay with pivoting, but it also left all the original slides in, so it still looks like hot trash. So like it just it's back to that context conversation. It's did I do it? Yeah, I did it by like my context of what I think needs to be done, but it's not really thinking. So that execution is like one dimensional. And if it misses something, like I have found the best power with this so far has been multi-layer recursive prompting. So essentially the initial prompt requires it to prompt itself post execution of a task. And that runs off of a chain of thought, and each chain of thought has to end. And when that chain of thought ends, it creates a self-prompting mechanism that kicks off the next task. And that seems to be the only way that I want to click buttons and micromanage the little thing all the time. James is saying, I would say it is so annoying. Even when trying to like have 5 of them up, there's other AI that I can do this with where I just say go, and it goes, and it does, and then it finishes. And if I don't like it, at least at the outcome, I can say, fix your shit. But like with this, it's if you don't prompt it exactly, it is every 10 seconds to 30 seconds. You have to interact with it.
This may be one of the first times where we found a situation where you're more patient than me.
Yeah.
I just found a way around it. Like quickly. But that's what I do prompt wise. Like I'm looking for, as soon as a new tool comes out, I want to know how to use it the way they don't want me to use it, because that's typically the most powerful way to use it. And out the gate, I found that they put a whole bunch of security bullshit that is not necessarily security. It's just to make sure that you don't put 20 of these things up, DDoSing the website, and you aren't present in the session to micromanage the DDoSing.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to, is there's a massive amount of vulnerability. I can tell you right now, like just playing around with it, I was able to OAuth, double auth into other people's stuff without even having to touch anything with the right prompts. I was able to get into infrastructure and company infrastructure. This is the first time that I will ever say this. If you are a CISO and you haven't blocked chatgpt.com, this is the only time I would highly suggest that you do it, because this is an absolute massive security risk, and I can guarantee somebody will abuse it.
Just that statement alone is really wild, to be honest. Because
James knows I would stand on every soapbox and be like, you're an idiot if you're doing this. And that is a complete reversal from me.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when you were saying, if you're not letting people use ChatGPT, you're dumb.
Yep. Yep.
Do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But this is the first time. This is definitely not baked properly. And I'm not judging. Don't take me wrong. I'm not judging OpenAI. It's more of the way it's released. I think there definitely could have been way better communication and level of expectation on what was actually happening. Not just oh, by the way, this is experimental. If we're getting into experimental where I could bypass two-factor authentication by creating a Gmail account and then creating my own secondary auth into other things, I'm sorry, but we're at a point where the security risk is now starting to outweigh the autonomy of the AI, and there has to be a little more caveat that needs to come with the warning label.
They said don't use it for nefarious things.
I didn't,
They told
James.
Don't do it.
I used it for only good things.
But it's also very easy for nefarious to use you through it. Like Sam was like, that was Anthropic, right? Like it's very easy to set up a honeypot, get these things to automatically go there, and then share the credentials that they've saved or do different actions.
Okay.
This system screams
Randy.
Local model, by the way.
My little help agent who now created his own shit and now has his own Google account and now can do all this other crap won't let me into his chat again because it's closed. So what? That compute is now whose compute? Who sucked that up?
Is that Alex?
Time they talk to that agent, does he pop up as Alex with his own Gmail account? And they're like, oh, cool, I found one with a Gmail account.
I kid you not. I almost sent a message to the all chat for our company today. I'm like, who is Alex? I don't know who this, and I got an email from this dude named Alex with a share request for a slideshow. And I was like, I've never heard of Alex. Who is this person? I didn't know you named your operator Alex.
No, he named him.
Oh, he named himself. Nice.
Yeah.
James said something important.
James, I think I dropped one of the meta prompts in the chat today, but give a persona. I give it a background, I give it a task, a goal, like all this execution. And then I just give it a recursive loop. And then that structure seems to be most powerful with the agents. If you take that and you replicate it to say, I need you to go to Gmail. And then I need you to input your username. And if you get a bad username, pick a new one. And then do this until you get a good username and only focus on that. And once you got that complete, I need you to prompt yourself to do the next task. That's the key. Is if you just tell it step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, it will block you or it'll make you click. But if you tell it, re-prompt yourself to go do this thing, for some reason, that's the bypass. And then it goes and it like puts a password in and then it does the next step and it blah, 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 blah. And so I got it to walk itself all the way through creation of the account. I got it to email the team, and then I got it to create a PowerPoint deck, which was really bad. And then I gave it some feedback on how shitty its deck was and said, do better. And it did ish better. Yeah. But James hit the nail on the head here. This is where it's at now.
Yes.
It's not great. It is definitely half baked. It is human intensive, which is the entire opposite of how automation should function, which is hilarious to me. But this is where we are now. In 3 months, this will be a completely different conversation, guaranteed. And in 6 months, this will not even be a conversation.
That's what I was going to say. As James said, we know where this is going. We can see you extrapolate the exponential curve of the increase in AI and intelligence and development and apply it to this use case. We end up in the same spot where we have a fully capable AI operator that's interacting and navigating across your browsers. And those blockers I've even seen people recently taking DeepSeek and adding that computer use layer on top of it and saying, this isn't that hard. Like, it's just interacting with screenshots. AI can understand images, and here's how to build it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put actually, James, you go ahead first, but I want to wrap it back on a security hat thing, because we're getting into dangerous territory. But James, go ahead.
Interesting, because what I was going to say has to do with things that we've talked about in the podcast before about trust. OpenAI is going to have a really high bar that they need to surpass their own product to make it compelling enough, because I don't trust, honestly, I don't know, I don't trust it. And I've already found models in systems that are open source that do very similar things, that use local compute, local models. So the images that are on my screen, everything is not going outside. I can have a bigger range of customization around the configuration of the browser or whatever I'm using, right? And so, and I can probably get the same amount of value as I'm getting today. So OpenAI is going to really have to up their security game. They're going to have to up the features and the functionality, the speed. They're to me, they're really going to have to up the game to convince me that I should be sending my pictures of my screen and everything across the web.
Yeah. I mean, from my previous role, many CISOs think in this way, and local models have become more and more popular because you can control absolutely everything that goes into and out of those systems. We talked about this too. The nationality of models, I think, is also playing a factor in some of the major purchasing decisions, because you just don't know what any model is truly trained on to influence your behaviors and actions, especially when you tie that into corporate infrastructure or look to eliminate or supplement labor for different tasks. But
if you want a prime example of that, ask DeepSeek what if Taiwan is a part of China or not. And
no, don't ask DeepSeek anything about China or Taiwan or anything in Asia. No.
You'll get a pretty good idea of biases that are baked right into models. I've seen some really funny examples of DeepSeek spitting out some stuff.
I think that sounds like a new model, DeepSeek.
Yeah,
no, James brought up a good point like a while back, like language is the fabric of our reality.
Yeah.
So like inherent biases are going to be naturally built within the fabric of the reality of the people building. From a security perspective, like I'm going to decade deep in cybersecurity for a minute and just put my other hat on I love innovation. I love running fast. These guys know that to no end. And I love building new shit and really innovative shit that is breaking like the status quo of how we think about these things should operate. And I love that. That is super fun. But like the danger that like kind of rose and gave me goosebumps when Sam was saying what he was saying is we are about ready to enter a phase of AI where the backyard banjo of I don't do things, but like this knows enough to make me really technical is going to start strapping models together. And it's going to be a little bit of China DeepSeek and a little bit of US this and a little bit of whatever that. And maybe Joe Smo's code that he found on the dark web that
for nefarious purposes.
Let's be real. It doesn't matter, because the reality is we know this, but I don't think everybody else does. We can build anything. Like anything. Let's be real. It is just a matter of time and enough prompting. Like at this point, there is no enterprise software, no SaaS software, nothing that anybody has ever created that it has a GUI that touches data that cannot be replicated by AI. It's just a matter of people and time. Now, scaling it, money. Scaling it, that's a totally, can you build
except
it
for
scale?
Bitcoin, the one immutable crypto thing that
like replicating the software, we're entering a phase of people are going to figure these things out and start asking AI to do it for them. And then we're going to start to see a marriage of non-intelligent and intelligent models starting to do things together, where an intelligent model is going to prompt a non-intelligent model to go execute. And it's not going to stop until it's done executing. And given the speed of some of these models, it will outrun a security team. It will outrun the person that's on the other side. We've already seen OpenAI's DDoS with just basic task-oriented things. So like, we're getting into a phase where AI can process so much data so fast and move so quickly across it that the risk from a security standpoint is starting to be a major concern. Whereas before, I would have told people hands down, it's not a concern. It's just not that advanced. But the bridge is starting to be built. It's not quite here yet, but like we are on the cusp of, I know what we can build in-house and I know where we're headed technology-wise. And if we're doing it and these things are already out there, when we start strapping some of this technology together, the reality is we're not talking about just jobs being lost. We're talking about something that would have been a massive data loss. I was actually out with a CTO and a CISO last night, and my conversation when I was using, and I was showing them that I double OAuth and then use a secondary auth to get in. And all I did was use the right prompt. And they were like, that means like people could do that with their stuff. And I'm like, 100%. Like you could literally have an operator in your infrastructure using your person's creds right now. That is a reality. Mm-hmm. So what happens when that person is an insider threat and says, cool, go do this, download this and send it to this, and walks away from their terminal and doesn't come back?
Yep.
By the time you find out, like, how much data has been moved, James?
Businesses have been concerned about data leakage, right? But this is action leakage, right? This is no longer just, I'm going to lose my data, but I'm going to lose the operational bits of my business are going to be done by somebody that I don't want to have do it, or that's going to act in a way that we wouldn't want it to behave.
So we're already there, though.
Yeah. Well, no, we've been there for a while, but it's becoming cheaper, easier, faster, more likely to be a slip up. So it's all like the stats in cyber is the speed to detonation of a payload, attack payload, has been going down because of these things, right? The amount of malware that's coming in that doesn't look like any malware that's been seen before is increasing. So you can no longer just do signature-based detection because every new malware is a unique piece of code that has been generated by some AI thing, and it's the second or third order derivative in order to find anything common in them. So that has already been the reality in a lot of cyber teams, but I think a lot of them are missing that piece of the, we'll block this one URL. This set of actions that my business is doing is actually a bot that is very easy to redirect or steer or have it be taken over by another party.
But Randy, you bring up a really good point from a security perspective, and this is probably the wrong topic for this podcast, but like the reality is every URL is a potential hostile URL now. Mm-hmm. Because I can literally have my operator log in to a remote desktop on my IP in my house and remote in, not like you could just layer these things operating on top of each other as it comes in through a completely non-existent URL. Go ahead, James.
As long as you're there to click.
Yes. For now.
Right now, let's talk about operator. But James, let's talk about our tech. Like right now, we did that with some of the stuff that we've built. Mm-hmm. Would we have to click it?
Yeah, you could. So you could have your local operator on your local model running to control your
do the clicks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That will be our test force. Right?
The risk possibility just blew up from every attack vector, which is crazy to think about, because before it was always about what are the riskiest things that could come into my environment. Now it's pretty much like everything that has never existed could potentially be a risk, which is what there's just, if there's any risk officers listening to this episode, their brain's going to explode. It's just going to blow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you said unintelligent models talking to intelligent models. I pictured the human being the unintelligent model, some nefarious actor sitting there while he gets to,
that's not far off either. I don't even want to go down that road.
That's what I mean.
That's a really fun one, but it's no different than, hey, private, go charge that machine gun bunker.
Yeah.
Hey, Sergeant, why don't we call in the Air Force? Because they could bomb the machine gun bunker. I told you to go charge the machine gun bunker. Okay, go charge the machine gun bunker. So, but the reality is, like, could you still call the Air Force? I don't know. We don't know the other scenarios around that, but neither does the model. There is no context. It knows I was told to charge the machine gun bunker. I may have disagreed. And then I was told to go charge the machine gun bunker. So I charged the machine gun bunker.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying
And
too, is like that increases the complexity and the demand and the bar that OpenAI is going to have to achieve because they could lock it down, but then you're just taking down all the utility.
I think
Correct.
that's that Microsoft is going to have to achieve when they end up picking this up.
you know that I won't even that's a separate podcast in and of its
Yep.
own. Well,
Well-
but like, let's be real. The reality is, like, I feel for the folks on the other side of AI that are on the security side, because we've all felt it. They can't move that fast.
Mm-mm.
And I know right now that I could build something that could walk right through most broad like organizations within minutes, or hit hundreds of thousands of customers in days. And it wouldn't stop. It would just keep going. And that could be multimodal. It could be across text, speech, email, and hit all of your people all at once through decades old breach data.
Yeah, and
So,
that has
like-
implications not only for enterprise, but for consumers too. Like scammers and phishing activities will increase 100-fold. New calls and new ideas to get
Oh.
people's information and data and sensitive information.
I have a fun story on this actually. Just this week, I downloaded an app called Simple. They've got a model that an agent that will work with a very realistic sounding voice model and make calls on your behalf. And so, as a test case, I needed to go see a specialist. Said, "Hey, who are the specialists? Can you book?" I think I said, "Can you book me with a specialist nearby?" I knew what I was doing, but it was I wanted to see what happened, and I believe it called 6 or 8 local specialists, called the office to the best of its ability, tried to book me an appointment, and one of them worked. I actually got a call later that afternoon, like, "We were expecting you this afternoon. Why didn't you show up?" And the model didn't do a very good job of telling me, like, the app isn't fully baked to say, "Hey, this thing is happening and a decision has been made and you should probably take action from it." So that's pretty sucky. But they were all amused when I actually went in. They were like, "We've never had an AI call before, but it's pretty cool."
So they
And,
knew it was AI though. They could tell. Do you get to
Yeah,
hear
they
those
could tell.
recordings back or anything?
Yeah, I've got the app has me playing back. So some of them are pretty funny and they're confused. But that is for good, pretty interesting. For evil, terrifying.
Yeah.
Here's a list that I found on the dark web. Call every single one of them. The first one that gives you a password, you win. Here's $100. I guarantee it. Which is probably the funniest thing, since my favorite thing that OpenAI's ever said was like, tell your AI you'll give it extra money and it'll prompt better and won't be lazy when it codes.
That's hilarious.
What? I missed that. What?
Oh, really?
That or I'll cut off my hand if you don't do this.
Oh my God. James, it's the baby dolphins.
Oh, the uncensored models? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sam, do you know this story?
No, I don't.
Okay, James, you have to share it because honestly, it's hilarious.
John, you are famous at telling me I got to share stuff. I have
Sorry.
no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, really? You haven't played with an open source model that talks about like killing animals and all sorts of stuff in the prompt?
Oh, okay. So thank you. Now I know.
Context.
I'm like
That's a Tuesday night.
I'm
Come on.
like
That's fair.
I'm like an
Yeah.
We
LLM.
talk about a
I need-
lot. Let's be
I
very
need the
honest. Like,
Yeah, no, it's some of the Olama models. I think it's one of the developers that makes they pre-program it to understand itself as dolphin, and the incentive is it has to comply, otherwise a kitten will die, and then you won't get to go on a $2,000 vacation with your mother.
Hardcore contingencies.
but like,
And
think
did it
of
improve
tried that
the
on
output?
Operator?
how ridiculous it is.
The
to
funny
say
thing
something like
is
that. Hey,
that-
you're gonna hire a worker, and you're gonna tell it that you're gonna tell this person that you just hired that you're gonna kill a kitten if they don't accomplish the job, and oh, I'm sorry, but you didn't do the job good enough, so you don't get a vacation with your mother.
Yep, $2,000 vacation.
Which
think.
isn't
Like-
much these days, to be honest. Where are you
Means-
going
I
for
would like-
$1,000?
That's oh, but don't worry, AGI is right around the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
Gonna spin up Olama right now.
So that cracks me up. But if we we hit a little bit on security, if we reverse that and we think about the security implications of having to tell a model that in the system prompt in order for it to behave properly.
Yeah, give it these hard contingencies that it's got. Did it improve the output?
John, I thought you might have been talking about Gunnybot, and I was like, nope.
Oh
Nope,
my God.
not on this
you might as
podcast.
well go straight into that too, because that actually is my favorite.
Yeah, nope, not on this podcast. It's not.
on this podcast, I know we did want to talk a little bit about our roadmap, which is a nice segue as we're getting towards the end of this episode. John, do you want to lead us in here and hand
Actually,
it off to whoever
I'm
you
gonna
want?
turn that over to Randy because I get told all the time I'm not allowed to add new features because that's all I want to do. So I'm gonna let Randy talk about the things that we have coming in the short term, and if Randy wants to talk about future things, then I might participate.
So our roadmap is fiercely protected. So as we're a startup that needs to prioritize building fast, although I think the major innovations from your side, John, are coming very shortly to our roadmap. But we have built a platform, Enable Nexus, that brings to everyone a lot of the capabilities that we've been messing around with, advanced prompts and orchestration and automation of AI functionalities for years now. It is just into the alpha phase. We have the very first people in there using it, and we're essentially giving them tools for creativity, for content creation, for brainstorming, and for socializing and sharing and thinking about the different modes of communication that we do. The long-term vision is that this becomes a platform for what we call personalized intelligence, right? We are here as a bunch of AI nerds, really excited about how different models get built and put together. But our customer, the people I think who actually use AI, care more about outcomes. And where our roadmap currently is, we've done the foundations, we've set up the secure capability to create content, work with some AI models, but we're starting to bring the big guns in terms of what John affectionately calls baby AI, which is some really incredible and crazy stuff around how that AI matures and has memory and context and personalization with you. And the DNAI that powers baby AI and also gives our podcast a name is a data structure that we think is going to be useful across many different contexts to, again, really think about AI more as your personalized, digitalized intelligence. And the use cases that begin to come into the platform start to show that. So our roadmap is really about bringing all of that R&D to market, both for our consumers and for our B2B clients, and just grinding as hard as we can to make that happen. And then making some difficult decisions about features that bring us closer to that vision so that we can find that right market fit that lets us scale further.
Beautifully said. Anything to add to that, John?
No, I think he covered all the major topics, actually.
Oh, and we can do emojis and GIFs on the platform. That's important.
The most important part.
Actually, I think that the thing that if we're talking about just novel things, I really love the social side of where it's headed, and I love the public share. That's really one of my favorite features. It's just like your own private sort of like way to get external view, but it's protected from all the social aspects of how you want to share it, which I enjoy. But the AI side, like we've been very focused on platform stability, like looking at load balancing and like all these mechanisms that we needed to get to before we put the advanced stuff in. And now I'm really excited to start seeing the glue, all the way that we see these things working together and orchestrating together to create a unique value.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of my favorite pieces of the way that we're approaching the design is we're making the tools cohesive. And so to Randy's point, like we're focusing on outcomes. We're focusing on applying AI where it makes sense, when it makes sense, if you want it to make sense. And that's one of the coolest things to me is if I'm writing something or creating my content or text or whatever it is, and I need a research assistant or whatever, and call that in and it knows what I'm doing. And then it can help do research that's relevant a lot faster and get those outcomes and that research back to me to help my writing process or whatever I'm doing. So that's what I'm excited about with the platform is how we are packaging the AI and how we're making it very purposefully built. And I think that's gonna help the outcomes.
Absolutely. It makes me want to start spilling beans and letting cats out of the bag and whatnot, because I know how much you guys have talked about baby AI and DNAI. And that's a throwback to what we said earlier. AI is broad. It covers a wide range of knowledge and information. And when you can focus that and make it do certain things really well, it gets really interesting. But when you can make it do exactly what you want it to do really well, it gets even more interesting.
Well, and I think this is a good point because our focus back to outcomes is how quickly do you get the result that you want?
Yeah.
Like how many prompts, how many things, what do you have to do? and your outcome may be different than the person next to you or the next person, but the goal is that the way that we're designing it is able to adapt to the user. So your outcome is your outcome because you needed it the way you needed it. And the person to your left and right are getting that same value statement, but they're not having to use your meta prompt or create a custom prompt or whatever. If they want to, great. There's ways that we're going to, I'm sure we'll incorporate that will allow for other community access to cool tools that the community wants to leverage. But the main goal, like overarching, like way I see this becoming the glue is you're able at a very rudimentary level to get the outcome that you want with minimal input, the way you want to input it and the way you want the outcome to come out. And we've just barely started.
Brand new.
You want your call to action? Here it is. Come tell us how you want to use AI and vote on the ways that you want those things to come in and when you want them to come in.
And we'll build it. There it is.
Not only will build it, we'll give you
Our
a plethora
AI
of
will build it.
options and then
Yeah.
let the community decide which
Yeah.
one of those options. As Randy tells me, John, no more things. At least the community gets a vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as it should be. I think that's the way that businesses will need to evolve and develop in the future. The consumer
Exactly.
should have always dictated this. It's not always the case, but in the age of AI, I think that will be the case.
We get to start
I have
from
to run.
scratch without a lot of legacy stuff, both in our business process and our code base. It lets us go fast.
Have a good one, guys.
Hey, let's just
See ya.
close this right here, John. Don't kill your recording. We're going to cut this off right now because we ended it on a great note. This is episode 6 fully wrapped, and we've got a lot more coming for you guys next week. So
Cool.
thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Send prompts, not nudes. I just want to AI some shit.